I want to say that actually, what Benny, I think, referred to is the imperative that we all align around this consensual emergency situation that we're in. I think that the unity he's calling for is in terms of our ability to face this emergency situation, to acknowledge that it exists with close to 7,000 new COVID-19 cases per day, and the imperative to try and get the disease under control. That's just where we're at. Those are the facts and figures. The closure is just a mechanism. It's not a punishment. It's a mechanism to try and get this COVID-19, I'd say, outburst into some sort of control. Otherwise, we will live with the consequences, all of us together.
Right. Michal, I just want to listen to a comment made to us earlier today by the Likud parliamentary whip, Miki Zohar, on some of the most controversial aspects of these new restrictions.
If blue and white will continue support this protest, we cannot stay with them in the same government. This is what I'm saying, and I think all of the public in Israel agree with me, and this is what will happen, unfortunately.
Michal, Benny Gantz called on the protesters to cooperate in these restrictions. They believe this is a tactic by Benjamin Netanyahu to suppress their democratic right. We just heard Miki Zohar taking a very aggressive tone toward the protests. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Look, we're in a situation that we have to balance between the imperative to safeguard public health with the imperative to safeguard democratic rights, such as the right to protest, such, by the way, as the right to worship, such as the right to property. We're really in a situation that we haven't been in before. And I would say that actually, if you juxtapose it against the calls for unity that you expressed, that Benny Gantz actually just spoke about, that is the juxtaposition. This is not a simple unity government. It's a unity government that is meant to highlight and to pave forward the potential for unity, for authentic unity, for genuine unity. But we're not there. We're at a place of technical unity, and we are facing an emergency situation. We are at a time of emergency. And in that time of emergency, the only way we can confront it is with that sense of mutual guarantee, with that sense of safeguarding ourselves and our neighbors and our parents and our children, that sense of mutual guarantee that is imperative and upon which the State of Israel was founded, and actually which is imperative for its continued existence.
Well, it is going to be quite a big sacrifice for a lot of Israelis, especially financially. I do want to move on, Michal, because you have other work in the government, of course, and you just received a new post connected with the International Criminal Court in The Hague, which is increasingly seen as, let's say, potentially hostile territory by Israel. Of course, many expect there to be a decision to open a criminal probe investigating whether Israeli soldiers have committed war crimes against Palestinians. Now, a new position has been created of a parliamentary representative to the ICC, and you have been appointed to that post. Well, let me ask you about that. What are your responsibilities now vis-a-vis the International Criminal Court?
I think the first very important point that I want to make is the acknowledgement that we have a problem at the ICC and that there is room for Israel's parliament to engage with other parliamentarians around the world in order to expose the double standards, address this issue, really for the benefit of the ICC itself, for the benefit of the people that are meant to benefit from the ICC's protection as trustees of international law and human rights, which at the moment, if indeed the decision as you that we are anticipating, as you forecasted or foreshadowed, will be to possibly bring Israeli soldiers and officers to trial for human rights violations, for criminal acts during Operation Protective Edge in 2014 and for crimes against humanity, then that would really be an undermining of the court's very mandate. That court's mandate, the vision, mission, and values of that court are not served well when Israel is obsessively and I remind us all that just last week we received a final rendered decision from the Mavi Marmara case 10 years ago, in which the court actually ruled that Israel cannot stand trial at the ICC because of a very fundamental concept of complementarity, according to international law, which acknowledges the importance of the Supreme Court of the State of Israel, of the rule of law that the State of Israel upholds and promotes and protects. So if that court isn't able to focus on its mandate, and I should say with the limited resources that it holds, what it means is that it is not affording protection to the people that actually need it and require it. And so the ability of parliamentarians, and we have many opportunities to engage with our fellow parliamentarians around the world, both officially and unofficially. And that's what this position holds the prospect of, to engage with our fellow parliamentarians, to address this double standard, to change the possible understandings that the rest of the world needs to take responsibility and accountability for the ICC in order for it to be able to fulfill its mandate, of which we are all trustees.
Right. Now, the Trump administration certainly shares Israel's concerns and even, let us say, skepticism towards the ICC, but they're taking a little bit of quite a different approach. Rather than trying to engage with it in the way you're doing, they've not only chosen not to engage in it, but even to place sanctions on some of its officials. So why do you feel engaging in some way with it may be more beneficial for Israel than the, let's say, more aggressive approach taken by the United States?
I would say that Israel doesn't have the privilege not to engage in the language of rights, in the language of international law. It doesn't have the privilege not to speak the lingua franca spoken by our peers in parliaments around the world. And if you'll note, I spoke primarily about the imperative to engage with our fellow parliamentarians around the world. I'm not sure that we can, and in fact, I think that we cannot change the ICC's handling of the situations, whether they're with regard to Israel or any other country. But I do believe that the countries around the world, all trustees of international law and human rights, all have the responsibility to hold the ICC to account. And I don't think we can do this on our own. That's the importance of engaging. And one more aspect of it is that having a representative inside the Knesset also means that I am going to make accessible to my fellow parliamentarians here in the Knesset what are the considerations that we should at least keep in mind as we sit around the decision-making table when it impacts Israel in the international arena. And in many, many ways, Israel has been absent from the discussion, in absentia. In many ways, the discussion in the international arena with regards to Israel's standing has actually been flawed by that. And it's time for us to take responsibility and just to take part in the discussion.
Right. I just want to end on a note. Of course, your father, Erwin Cotler, former Justice Minister of Canada, is a noted figure in this global discussion on human rights and just these issues. So I presume you have his blessing. Is there something in his path that will help you deal with the ICC on Israel's sake?
I think that you're right that I come by it honestly. You're right that it's inculcated so deeply into us. And I think that the imperative for the State of Israel to rise from the docket of the accused is very much informed by my father's inculcation of those messages and the understanding that for international law and human rights to truly fulfill their potential, we have to hold to account those that are using it or abusing it in a way that actually undermines the very mission, vision, and values of those intentions that we were meant to uphold and protect as trustees of international human rights law. And in fact, I think that the most important piece of that is the commitment of the State of Israel to engage, as I said, with other countries and to be able to bring that message to parliamentarians around the globe as well.
All right, Michal, I know you have a vote coming up, presumably not too late tonight on these new coronavirus restrictions. Good luck in your new responsibilities there at the dealing with the International Criminal Court. Thank you for joining us on I-24 News.
Thank you.